Hey guys, welcome back to Holistic Homesteading with the Hurst. I'm Megan Hurst. If you are new to our channel, then you may not know that we are new to homesteading. In 2021, we decided to pack up everything, move out to the country on 7 acres of land, and we are starting from scratch on building gardens and raising animals. So a few weeks ago, we actually got to go learn from some new friends, Mallory and Kyle. And we got to just tour their farm and learn a lot from them. And so I'm excited to show you guys this video of the tour. So the first thing that I asked them was, what was sylvopastures?
So sylvo in Latin just means like trees or forest, and then pasture is pasture grass. And so it's just a combination of both, and they can be done in two ways. You could take a forest and thin out the trees to get a base of pasture. Or you could take a pasture and add trees to it and let them grow up and have the stacking of trees as well as pasture grass.
Yeah, they're so little. It's so funny because like when they get big, like one of their heads will fit in those feed pans, and now like 3 of them will just sit in the feed pan. Yeah, they know that buckets mean food and milk. At least they figured that out. So yeah, these are only like a month old, and so they're still needing milk, so we're just giving them Daisy's milk.
Sally does want to see the pigs, so maybe she'll...
We bought a beef like mama, and she ended up getting a foot injury, and we had to process her. So we have 2 calves like left out of that.
That's stinky.
So one of them is a female, and she'll probably become like our beef mama. So she'll just keep having beef cows, and then here's a male that we'll process next year. Like 1.5 years.
Right, probably closer to 2 years, yeah.
Yeah, so that'll be our beef for our family.
And so part of like the process we're doing here is to establish the pasture, because obviously this was forest. We are spreading out hay, so I'm strategically feeding them in areas. If you just let them eat around it, all that manure and urine is just going to concentrate around that one bale. So what I'm trying to do is spread it all over, so I'm getting a pretty equal distribution of manure and urine. That's going to go back and break down a lot of this organic matter that's been built up for this being woods for 40 years. So, and that's kind of why you can see a pretty good distribution of hay that they're not going to eat, which will be fine. It'll break down and go to soil, but also the manure. It's kind of spread out nice. And so once I get it to a point where it's pretty equally distributed around here, I'll move them to the next spot and continue that process.
Yep, and then you can see like over here we seeded this, and so this is grass coming up, and this has had, well, I guess it had sheep, chickens, and pigs go through it. And after the pigs is when we seed the grass, and then we don't like touch it. Well, if chickens get out, they try to touch it. But we don't touch it after that. We just let it grow, and then that's like what it'll look like once we just let it sit for a long time. So that's the goal, and like by next year, like our whole property, or the front acres of our property will all look like that. But it's just like putting animal pressure on it and fertilization, seeding, and then letting it grow. So like that area up there is also areas where other pigs were. We throw the seed in like with the pigs, and the pigs stomp it in like the last day that they're in there.
Okay.
And then we move them, and then we don't touch it for months.
So let's say somebody has a pasture. Why would they want to plant trees?
Right, yeah. So because it gives you shade and like deeper roots. So but shade would help with hot summers, like hot sunny days. Your animals all need shade to just not get like dehydrated, really. I mean, of course you have water and stuff like that, but it just helps them to regulate their temperature. And then the deep roots help the ground to not get well, Kyle would explain this better, but like the deep roots help the ground to be more resilient, because if you have grass, your roots are only like that long, right? But if you have trees, you have roots going deep into the ground. So if you have a drought, you don't have water for a long time, your ground is still going to be like soaking up what it can from like the water tables, I guess, and then whatever has fallen before, it's going to soak into the ground instead of just kind of evaporating quickly if it's just grass, right? Because if it's just grass and you just have the sun beating down on it, it's like by the time it rains, it's gone. Pretty much. Or if you have deep roots, it's going to all soak down deep into your ground and stay in your ground, and you won't get runoff because we have a little bit of a slope. So if we had like if you see pastures on slopes, you can see like water just starts running off, and just going down. And so all your soil and your fertility is just leaving. Where with this, like the trees are catching all of it. So it's good for heavy rains or drought. And so this is Tinker. This is our little heifer. She was just born like a month ago, and she's wanting milk badly. So that's why she's making noise. But she is actually, we're really glad she's female because her mom, Daisy, is A2A2, which, do you know about A2A2?
It's easier to process, like your milk.
Yeah,
or
it's easier for
digest.
your digestive system to process because it's a more traditional protein versus like what's been bred and mutated like through the years of breeding for like dairy, different dairy cows. It's kind of a little bit hard to find, and so Daisy was A2A2, and then her Tinker's dad was also A2A2, which means that she is for sure. So we haven't had her like tested, but pretty much she's going to be. So it's exciting because now we have another cow that we'll be able to milk in a couple of years once we breed her. And so her dad is a brown Swiss cow, so she favors more the brown Swiss look, and her mom is Jersey. She's like really dark, but different. They're both milk cows, and they're both more traditional milk cows versus like the conventional genetically adapted milk cows of today. Like Holstein stuff, they give a lot of milk. They'll give like, I don't know, probably 4 to 6 gallons or something of milking, but it's more like skim milk because it's just like watered down. So it's in volume it's higher, but in nutrition it's not as high. Where Jerseys and brown Swiss and some of the more like Guernseys, like the more traditional types of milk cows, they give more nutritious milk, but it's not as much volume. But it's like all the cream and then like, it's all like in that small amount.
Okay.
Yeah. Usually if we were gonna drink it ourselves, we would clean her teats and have a clean bucket and stuff, but we're just giving it to the pig, so it doesn't matter.
What we do is I bring a little jar of like, I'd basically boil water and just mix a little bit of clean soap in it, and then we have a rag, and then I just wipe it down, and then I have a dry one, and then I dry it down. And then one thing when we're milking her for milk, before we start collecting it, we call it stripping. You just 1, 2, and it just releases all the bacteria that could be at the tip. And we do that for each of the teats, and then from there we're ready to go.
How long does it usually take you to milk?
You know, I don't know. I've never really timed myself.
20 minutes, 30?
No, probably like 15 to 18 minutes. We really try to get about a gallon, and I don't overdo it because with Tinker, she'll drink whatever we don't take, and so I'm not overly worried about it, and we're just trying to like, basically get a gallon a day. So I take what I need and then I'm out, and then I let Tinker in, and then she finishes the job.
I haven't milked in a couple weeks, and I feel I'm very out of practice.
So one of the reasons why we got Daisy, we were definitely are not set up, as you can tell, for a dairy cow. It's worked out fine, and it's part of the process, and we needed, the fertility she adds to the soil. But we found her, was it in Middle Tennessee, and there's a few criteria that we were looking for a dairy cow that we wanted to check those boxes before we pulled the trigger on getting one. And then like, what are some of those? Like A2A2 is one of them.
I explained a little bit of that.
Okay, grass coming from a grass-fed herd, minimal vaccinations, not doing wormers all the time, just the smaller amount of chemical inputs, the better. And these folks that we're buying her from treated her basically like a pet. They loved on her. They did what they needed to do. She wasn't just a tool to make money, and so we bought her. And also the price is right, which was another thing. I don't know if it was just fair or market value. I don't know if we would have bought her, but she was way below market value, and we knew if we didn't get her, we probably would never come across another cow like her. Oh, and also she was bred to a brown Swiss who was A2A2, which basically is like 100% chance that Tinker's A2A2 as well. And so that was cool.
Have you ever milked any animal before?
No, but I have milked myself.
There you go. So you kind of understand, like, you'd have to, like, pinch off the top and then, like, strip it down. I usually do almost like this because her teeth are pretty small. Thumb and then these fingers and, like, squeeze it and then pull down. And then pull down. There you go. And then you can see if you want to watch my technique for a minute.
Babies are a lot rougher.
Yeah. So kind of pinch it off at the top and then roll your fingers down and then squeeze. Yeah, so pinch, roll. Hey, hey Micah, do you want to come sit with me?
Go over here.
He says.
And then just go around. You don't want to be real close.
You can kind of feel the milk coming out.
There you go.
Do you want to try?
Okay.
You want to try? You got it, babe?
Just remember that you have to like kind of cut off the top and then push the fluid down, because if you just squeeze without cutting off the top, the milk will go back up into the teat. But if you cut off there and then squeeze.
Yeah. We have a milking stool at the house. We just
Really? Everything we had done like that direction, we just did by hand. So Kyle, just hard work. Chainsaws and fires and mulchers and stuff like that. But this Forestry Mulcher came in and in like basically like 2 days was able to do all of this. And it was, you can look like back there and see how dense things are, like brambly and thick. And even kind of up there, you can see we haven't really touched this area. Oops. But you see like how thick all those trees are back there, and it's really shaded and dark. Like that's an area that's been untouched. So that's what all of this looked like a couple days ago. But we rented a Forestry Mulcher, or we didn't rent it, we rented the service. So a guy came out with his Forestry Mulcher and he did all of it. And he worked for 8 hours for like 2 or 3 days and just knocked things down and mulched it. The pigs are gonna go through all of this and, you know, add all their fertilizer, dig things up. Cows will go through it too, and then seed and then like not touch it for a while, and then it'll become pretty grass. Then we'll be able to have sheep and cows and ruminant animals, which ruminant animals are much more sustainable because they just eat grass. Right now, most of our business is like pigs and chickens because we don't have grass, so we're feeding them grain, but they're doing a lot of work for us. They're digging it up and tilling up and making the ground ready for seed so that we can't get grass, because you can imagine like a dense forest, you can throw grass seed all around it, it's not going to do anything unless you've opened up the crown cover and there's more sun, and then the ground is, you know, tilled up a little bit.
They'll always go after one bucket. They won't go to the 2 buckets at once.
They're skittish, aren't they?
Yeah, they're
There's also a lot.
Yeah.
But as soon as one puts her nose in it,
Oh
game
yeah.
on.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
Let's forget about this other bucket over here that
I know.
nobody's at.
I know. That always happens.
Oh no!
They love it. They love
Like,
it.
I can't get enough of it. Oh my gosh.
Oh, how funny.
Yeah.
So do pigs just process grains better? Like cows? Because I know with cows you want grass fed, but
Yeah, so pigs and humans are the same. We're both omnivores, so they do a lot better with diversity.
okay.
Yeah, if anyone tries to tell you that a pig can be grass fed, or they're selling you a grass fed pig, run away, because it's just not true. I mean, you have pigs that will eat grass, and they might be able to convert some of that to some kind of calorie, but not a whole lot. Not a whole lot at all.
These
Some
three are
people
the smart
do
ones.
like their pigs on pasture, which is just also an interesting idea because you're kind of ruining your pastures. Which, like, that's why what I was saying is like, once these pigs touch that, they're never going back there again. Like they've done their work, they've tilled it up for us, we've put seed in, grass is growing, and now only ruminants are gonna go there, or chickens. But like they dig and root, which is great, but you have to use it wisely. You wouldn't want to throw them on a pasture and just let them ruin it. Unless you're trying to disturb that pasture for, you know, to do something. But I mean, it's not, they're gonna damage it.
especially in the summertime when you have like parasites are really cycling and whatnot. You definitely want to move them quick and often. Otherwise, you
Don't
might have,
keep them longer than 2 weeks.
yeah, so like keep them on a rotation that's move them by at least a 2-week point.
Okay.
And honestly, in the summertime and in the wet, really wet season, I'm not getting anywhere close to 2 weeks. I'm getting closer to a week, if not 5
Okay.
days. And
Don't
really,
want
you
it
just
to get really muddy. Is that what you're like?
well, yeah, you don't want to, yeah, exactly. You're basing it on what the land looks like. This was a pretty good distribution of their impact, right? You do see some like craters. If you keep them in a really long time, and I can walk you over to where we had our little pigs, there's a lot of like these craters, and that's just not what you're going for, especially if you're trying to like take woods and make it like a usable grazing space. There's like a sweet spot with the pig impact. You kind of want to let them go in until the first few inches and then move them on. But again, if you want to designate a spot on your property that this is going to be your pig lot and you're going to do a couple rotations a year out of it, maybe you don't care as much about what it looks like, or you're not trying to establish a pasture like we're doing.
I guess my thing is right now we do have a lot of forest, or behind the house there's a lot of really close trees. So how do you fit this type of thing back to there, or we need to clear that first?
Yeah, well, so with this type of fencing, like you could zigzag this in between trees, right? And
Just don't
honestly,
let it ground out, right?
Say
Right,
what?
Is that how that works? You don't want it to touch.
You don't
'cause
want it really to
ground
touch the
out?
trees, but if you have I think with that solar unit, you need to be a little bit more mindful of it. But like, we have a pretty hot Energizer, and so if it's touching a tree, like I don't really sweat it too much, just because I know it's still gonna be hot. But yeah, I mean, you could, like, we just got a forestry mulching unit in here, and like this was dense, and the last 3 days he's like completely opened this entire thing up. So you could have him go in there and do lines and clear out, like, he's just gonna eat through with his machine to clear out fence lines for you, or just run it zigzag. It doesn't have to be perfect. And honestly, when we first started doing that, when I was hand clearing all this, I really had to be flexible, and so my fences weren't ever straight. They kind of work kind of zigzag. That's again the beauty of these portable fences. You can manipulate them to be whatever you need wherever you need it, and that's why I've been really happy with them.
So I guess with pigs, they don't really need, like, we have a barn, but is it needed?
No.
And with your cow
Especially
too?
no. It's just I could see like a barn making sense up north where it gets really cold or something. But I follow folks that never even use a barn in the cold up there. So no, I think it really just comes down to movement. I mean, a lot of times I think people bring their livestock into barns in the wet season so they don't tear their pastures up. But if you're moving your animals, you really shouldn't have any pastures torn up, because you're moving them based on what the land looks like after they've been there. Again, going back to like the pigs, like they move based on what I observe as necessary to be moved, like their impact, right? Because I explained that I want a pretty even distribution of tillage, and I don't want the moon craters. And so if it's day 5 or 6 and I see, okay, that looks really good, let's get them out now before they really make a mess of it, I'll go ahead and move them. Yeah, I can explain it. So yeah, silvopasture. Well, there's multiple reasons why silvopasture is good. For one, you're stacking enterprises, so I can raise animals that will take and utilize grass and create meat and milk from, while also stacking trees that are now a timber product. So right, for our process, we took a forest that was overgrown, and we're thinning out the undesirables and the less competitive types. So like this one right here is a leaning, and it's never going to account for anything. But this one right here could be a potential saw log. So we're thinning out the junk and giving these bigger, nicer ones that have the potential to be a saw log more of an opportunity to grow and grow straight and whatnot. Because otherwise, if they're so dense, you see some of these straggly ones, they're straggly because they're competing for resources, whether that's sun, nutrients, water. And so we're just taking those out and giving these big straight ones the opportunity. It gives your animals the ability to be shaded. You mentioned, like, do you not need a barn? really this is kind of like an outdoor barn, because if we have a really big wind, a lot of these trees will prevent a lot of that wind, and so they could tuck away behind some trees. Summertime it could get real hot, and especially around here everyone raises black cows, and so having access to the shade that is pretty consistently throughout here, it keeps their body temperature lower, meaning they're going to use less water.
If you had pasture, would you plant trees?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Probably. And that's the one thing with us, like this is pine. It really doesn't offer like my animals anything. But if we had pasture, we'd probably plant things that offer a mass, like oaks, hickories, mulberries, persimmons, things that offer some kind of food that our pigs could eat, and then it would decrease our reliance on feeding them grain.
Do you have to reseed after every time you move them?
Yeah, that's a good question. We are planting a mixture of annuals and perennials, and I'm sure you understand like the idea of it. Sometimes people get confused, and I still sometimes. Annuals you have to plant yearly, so you can throw them down there, and then by the next year you're going to replant them. So like oats and wheat, those are all annuals. Some of the grass we're planting in there is perennial, so that means year after year after year they come back. And so we're doing a mixture of both. For annuals, kind of fill in all the holes to kind of give a complete cover. And so that looks like a pretty nice green carpet, really. And a lot of those annuals are kind of filling the spots of the perennial grasses that might take a little longer to develop. Annuals typically grow quick and fast, and they put all their nutrients in that seed head, and then once the grass comes up to a seed, then it dies off, and it's fulfilled its purpose. So yeah, we're doing a mixture of both. That's like 15 different species. I can't even tell you. There's probably like 4. Red clover, orchard grass, creeping red fescue is the basis of the perennial. And then we got all kinds of different annuals. And I suggest, like with planting behind animals or trying to establish, do as many species and variations as possible to figure out what works for your context, like your environment, like the soil, like what works. And the more you do, the more opportunity you're gonna have for one of them at least to work. And we've found that to be great because we've never had an issue getting at least something to grow really well.
So we're Mallory Bell, Kyle Bell. We run Forest Fed Farm. We're in Ocoee, Tennessee, which is in the southeast corner between Chattanooga and Knoxville area, and we sell to those regions. We are currently doing like drop-off sites in the kind of Cleveland area, but we're expanding to Chattanooga, Knoxville area, and we also do on-farm pickup. And what we sell is pork, which is forest-raised, organic, non-GMO, soy-free. So it's, we believe, the best quality ever. It tastes delicious. And then we also sell chicken meat and then chicken eggs. And we sell whole chickens or like cuts we're doing too. Right now we're currently not having meat because we've sold out, but this next week we're getting more chicks, so we'll have them in about 2 months. We'll have more chicken. And you can find us on Instagram at Forest Fed Farm, on Facebook at Forest Fed Farm. We take emails it's Kyle at forestfedfarm.com. Oh yeah, we have a website, forestfedfarm.com. And that shows what we offer. Oh, we also take campers. So we do like through Harvest Hosts, Airbnb, Hip Camp, and we have an RV site for campers or
full
trailers
hookup.
With the full hookup, electric and water. And then we're going to expand to more like tent camping spots and stuff like that in the future. Yes.
Well, thank you guys
Yeah.
so much for letting us
Thank you.
come
Thank
and
you.
learn and
It was awesome.
get all that good
It
stuff.
was a good day.
Yeah, definitely.